One single napkin. That was all it took to bring a billion-dollar empire to its knees, or save it from total destruction. Anthony Moore thought he was celebrating his engagement to the love of his life. He didn't know the woman, smiling at him from across the table, had just signed his death warrant. But in the shadows of the restaurant, someone was watching. A waitress, invisible to the rich and powerful, saw what no one else did. When she slipped a napkin under his wine glass, everything changed. What would you do if a stranger handed you a note, saying the person you love is about to destroy you? The clink of silver against fine china was the only music Carly Lopez knew by heart. In the Diamond Room, the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan, silence was a luxury, and the staff was paid to be ghosts. Carly adjusted the starched collar of her uniform, fighting the ache in her lower back. It was Tuesday, but inside those gold-trimmed walls, weekdays didn't matter. Only power did. And that night, Table 4 was the center of the universe. There sat Anthony Moore, the CEO of Moore Heavy Industries, a man whose fortune hovered in the 11 figures. He was younger than the gossip magazines made him seem, mid-30s, with a firm jaw and steel gray eyes, now softened by the woman across from him. Elena Vaughn, a former model turned philanthropist. Though Carly had never seen her donate more than disdain. To the service staff, she wore a red dress that probably cost more than Carly's entire student loan debt. "More wine, miss?" Carly asked in a low, practiced voice. Anthony didn't even glance her way. He nodded without breaking eye contact with Elena. "To us," he said, raising his glass, "and to the merger. Tomorrow morning, everything changes." Carly poured the 82 Cabernet with a steady hand, despite the tremor in her legs. She was invisible. They all were. That was the rule. If a waiter dropped a fork, it was a tragedy. If a waiter overheard a secret, it was a risk. Carly retreated to the service area, but her eyes lingered on Table 4. Something felt off tonight. Normally, Elena was effusive, touching Anthony's arm, laughing too loud. Tonight, she was tense. Her eyes darted repeatedly to her clutch on the table, then to the main entrance. "Table 7 needs bread," snapped the maitre d', Henry, as he rushed by. "Stop daydreaming, Lopez." "Yes, Henry." Carly grabbed the bread basket, but as she passed the hallway leading to the private restrooms, she caught a flash of red silk Elena had slipped away from the table while Anthony reviewed the wine list. Carly shouldn't have stopped. She should have kept walking, but Elena's tone, echoing faintly from the marble antechamber of the bathroom, rooted her in place. It wasn't the voice of a loving fiancé. It was the voice of a hunter. Carly pressed against the wall alcove, pretending to adjust her apron strings. "He has no idea," Elena whispered, low and urgent. "Yes, the transfer codes are on his phone. He unlocks it when he shows me photos. I can get them." A pause. "No, Marcus, don't worry about the security team. I dismissed the personal bodyguard for tonight. I told Anthony I wanted a private evening. We're exposed." Carly held her breath. Marcus Sterling, Anthony Moore's biggest rival, the man who'd been trying a hostile takeover of Moore Heavy Industries for 5 years. "Are they in position?" Elena asked. "Good. As soon as we leave the restaurant, do it. I want it to look like a mugging gone wrong." Carly felt the blood drain from her face. This wasn't just corporate espionage. It was an ambush, a setup. Mugging gone wrong meant violence. Elena hung up. The click of her heels on marble grew louder. Carly hurried, ducking into the service pantry just as Elena swept past, composing, her face into a mask of loving adoration before re-entering the dining room. Carly stayed in the dark pantry, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She gripped the bread basket tightly. "Don't get involved," her head screamed. "You need this job. You've got rent, your mom's medical bills. If you make a scene and you're wrong, you're fired. If you're right, you're dead." She peered through the door crack. Anthony was smiling at Elena as she sat back down. He looked so relaxed, so vulnerable. He was a shark in the boardroom, but tonight he was just a man in love. Carly thought of her dad, a good man destroyed by guys like Marcus Sterling, men who saw people as collateral damage. She couldn't let it happen. Not on her shift. But she couldn't speak up. If she approached and said, "Your fiancé is betraying you," Elena would deny it. Anthony would believe the woman in the red dress over the waitress in worn shoes. She'd be dragged out by security. It had to be subtle. Carly grabbed her order pad. Her hands shook badly. She tore off a small slip. It had to be short. She grabbed a pen. Your fiancé sold you out. They're in position. Don't trust anyone. She hesitated. Not enough. She added one more line. Check her call log. Marcus. She folded the paper into a tiny square smaller than a postage stamp. She took a deep breath, smoothed her apron, and stepped back into the dining room. She grabbed a fresh bottle of mineral water. It was her only excuse to return to the table so soon. As she approached table 4, the tension in the air was palpable, though Anthony seemed oblivious. Elena checked her watch. More water, ma'am? Carly asked. We're fine, Elena snapped without looking up. Please, Anthony said with a polite, distracted smile. Just a bit. That was the moment. Carly leaned over the table to refill Anthony's glass. She faked a small stumble, just a slight one. The bottle clinked against the base of the wine glass. Oh, sorry, sir, she exclaimed. Careful, Elena hissed. Anthony reached out reflexively to steady the glass. In that second of confusion, Carly's hand brushed his palm. She slipped him the tiny square. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Hers were wide, pleading. Read it. Anthony froze. He felt the paper in his palm. He was a man of pure instinct. You don't build an empire without knowing when the wind shifts. He didn't pull away, didn't drop it. He closed his fingers around. It's fine, Anthony said, his voice steady, though his eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Carly. No harm done. Sorry, sir, she murmured, backing away slowly. I'll let you enjoy your evening. She retreated to the shadows near the kitchen door, her heart in her throat. She watched. Anthony waited until Carly was gone. He picked up his napkin, slipped his hand under the table as if adjusting his pants. When it came back up, the paper was gone. He took a sip of wine. His eyes slid to Elena. You seem distracted, darling, he said. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone, replaced by a terrifying neutrality. Just excited for tomorrow, Elena smiled, reaching for his hand. Anthony didn't take it. Instead, he lifted the menu, opening it to shield his face. Inside the leather fold, he unfolded the tiny note. Carly, from about 20 feet away, saw Anthony's shoulders stiffen. She saw his knuckles whiten as he gripped the edge. He read the words, Your fiancé sold you out. Check her call log. Marcus. Anthony closed the menu, set it down slowly. He looked at Elena. Really looked. He saw the sweat on her upper lip. He saw her eyes keep flicking to the door. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. Who are you calling? Elena asked, her voice rising a pitch. I thought no phones tonight. Just checking the time, Anthony lied smoothly. But it wasn't true. He was texting. Not his assistant, but David Shaw, his head of security. The one Elena had dismissed on a whim. Code red. Get in now. Carly leaned against the wall, feeling faint. She'd thrown the pebble. Now she had to watch the ripple. The vibe at table 4 had gone from romantic to radioactive. Anthony Moore sat with the stillness of a predator about to strike, his eyes fixed on the woman he'd planned to propose to that very night. The velvet box in his jacket pocket weighed like a sentence. He needed proof. The waitress, what was her name? He hadn't even glanced at her name tag. She could be a crazy person, a disgruntled ex-employee, sent by another rival to sow discord. But mentioning Marcus was too specific. Only 3 people knew about tomorrow's merger. Him, Elena, and his lawyer. If Marcus Sterling knew, there was a leak. And the leak was sitting across from him, picking at her lobster risotto. Anthony, you're staring, Elena said with a brittle laugh. Do I have something on my face? Just admiring the view, he replied. You know, I was thinking about security. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Security? Why? I feel exposed tonight, he lied, watching her reaction. Maybe I should call my bodyguard back. No, Elena said too quickly. She leaned across the table and grabbed his hand. Her palm was clammy. Don't ruin the moment, Anthony. It's just us. Safe with me. Safe with me. The irony tasted like ash in his mouth. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the restaurant burst open. 3 men entered. They weren't in the formal blazers typical of the Diamond Room. They wore bulky trench coats, despite the mild weather. They didn't wait to be seated. They scanned the room, their eyes locking immediately on table 4. Carly, from the service area, felt her stomach drop. She saw Elena's eyes widen, not in fear, but recognition. Then she feigned confusion. "Who are those guys, Anthony?" He didn't answer. He stood up. The lead man, a burly guy with a scar across his eyebrow, reached inside his trench coat. Anthony yelled, "Get down!" Chaos erupted. Diners screamed, tables overturned, but Anthony didn't hit the floor. He flipped the heavy oak table. Plates, crystal, and the 82 Cabernet crashed to the ground, forming a barrier between him and the gunman. "Elena, get behind me," he shouted. It was a test. She didn't move behind him. She scrambled sideways, out of the line of fire. "Don't shoot me!" she shrieked at the men. "I'm not with him!" It was the final nail in the coffin of his trust. The gunman raised a silenced pistol. Thwip, thwip. 2 bullets splintered the table wood. Anthony was unarmed. He crouched behind the barricade, scanning for an exit. The kitchen was his only way. He bolted low toward the service doors. "Get him!" the lead gunman roared. As Anthony burst through the swinging doors into the kitchen, he nearly collided with Carly. She was frozen, holding a tray of desserts. "You," he said, grabbing her arm. "Did you write the note?" "Yes," she squeaked. "Is there a back exit?" "The loading dock," Carly stammered. "Through the pantry. Show me now." He didn't give her a choice. He dragged her along. Kitchen staff dove under prep tables as the gunman crashed through the service doors behind them. "This way!" Carly yelled, adrenaline taking over. She finally dropped the tray. Pastries and creams splattered everywhere, and she ran toward the heavy steel doors at the back. She punched in the code on the panel. 1984. The door buzzed. They burst out into the cool night air of the alley. The smell of garbage and wet pavement hit them. "Where's your car?" Carly gasped. "A block away." "Compromised," Anthony snapped. He looked at her. "You saved my life in there, but if they see you, you're a loose end. You have to come with me." "What?" "No, Marcus Sterling doesn't leave witnesses." Before Carly could argue, the headlights blinded them. Carly screamed, backing against the brick wall. Anthony stepped in front of her, fists clenched, ready to fight. The window rolled down. "Get in, boss." It was his head of security. "Thank God," Anthony sighed. He yanked open the back door, shoved Carly inside, and dove in after her. "Drive!" he roared. Bullets sparked off the SUV's armored chassis as the driver accelerated. The vehicle screeched out of the alley, clipping a dumpster, and tore onto the main avenue. Inside the car, silence hung like lead. Anthony leaned back in the seat, straightening his jacket. Though his shirt was torn and stained with red wine, he looked at Carly. She'd curled into the corner of the leather seat, her waitress uniform splattered with chocolate smears from the dropped tray. She was shaking uncontrollably. "Who are you?" Anthony asked, his voice low but intense. "Carly," she whispered. "Carly Lopez." "Well, Carly Lopez," he said, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket and handing it to her. "You've just become the most important person in my life, and the biggest danger I've got." He turned to the driver. "Shaw, take us to the safe house. The penthouse is compromised. And kill all electronic signals. They're tracking us." "Already done, sir," the head of security replied from the front. Anthony turned back to Carly. His eyes were hard. "Now tell me exactly what you heard, word for word, because if you lie, I'll open this door and drop you right here." Carly met the billionaire's gaze. She realized the danger hadn't ended at the restaurant. It was just beginning. The safe house wasn't a house. It was a brutalist concrete bunker disguised as a mid-century modern mansion in the hills outside New York City, accessible only by private helicopter, which they boarded at a heliport in Teterboro. Carly had never been in a helicopter. In other circumstances, the view of the city lights fading would have been beautiful. That night, it felt like a lifeline flickering out. They landed on a dark pad. The head of security led them inside. The interior was cold, minimalist, lined with screens. Anthony poured himself a drink. Straight whiskey, steady hands now. He didn't offer her one. He pointed to a steel chair in the center of the room. "Sit." Carly sat. She felt small, dirty, terrified. "Start talking," Anthony said, leaning against a marble island. "How did you know about the call? How did you know about Marcus?" "I told you," Carly replied, her voice shaky but gaining strength. Now she was angry. She'd saved him, and he was treating her like a criminal. I was in the hallway. Elena went to the bathroom. She thought she was alone. She called someone. She mentioned the transfer codes on your phone. She said to make it look like a mugging gone wrong. Anthony swirled his glass. And the name Marcus, she said, "No, Marcus, don't worry about the security team." Anthony closed his eyes. The confirmation hurt. She saw it, but he buried it instantly under a layer of fury. "Do you know who Marcus Sterling is?" he asked. "Everyone knows who he is," Carly said. "He's the CEO of Sterling Dynamics. He's your competitor." "He's not just a competitor, he's a shark. And if Elena's working for him?" Anthony paced the room. "She has access to my private server, my biometrics. If she has my phone," he patted his pockets. "Damn it," Anthony snarled, hurling the glass against the wall. It shattered. "I left it on the table when I flipped everything." "She has the phone," Carly said quietly. "She said she needed the transfer codes. It's for the merger, right?" Anthony stopped pacing. He looked at her with new interest. "You're sharp for a waitress." "I was studying law," she snapped back. "Before my dad got sick and I had to drop out to pay bills." "I know what a hostile takeover is." Anthony stepped closer, looming over her chair. "If she has my phone, she can bypass two-factor for the bank transfers, but she needs a retinal scan or voice print." "She has your voice," Carly said. "She said she has hours of recordings of you, and you unlock the phone when you show her photos." Anthony paled. "Facial recognition. She's been training it with her face as a secondary user. I thought she was just playing." "Sir?" The head of security interrupted from the monitors. "We've got activity. More heavy industries accounts are flagging unauthorized transfers. Massive ones. They're draining the liquidity." "Freeze them," Anthony ordered. "Can't. The auth code came from your device. The system thinks it's you. They're moving the money to shell companies offshore. Cayman Islands, Panama. How much? $2 billion and climbing." Anthony slammed his fist on the table. "They're not just taking the company, they're gutting it. They'll buy the carcass for pennies tomorrow morning." He turned to Carly. "Did you hear what else Marcus said?" "A place, a meeting point." Carly closed her eyes, recalling the bathroom echo. She said, "They're in position," and then something about the foundry. Anthony and the head of security exchanged looks. "The foundry," Anthony said darkly. "Sterling's old manufacturing plant in Newark. It's been abandoned. That's where he does his off-the-books deals," Shaw confirmed. "If Elena's heading there, she's taking the phone to finalize the transfer with him." Anthony grabbed a sleek black tactical vest from a wall rack. He started strapping it over his ruined shirt. "Shaw, gear up. We're going to Newark." "I'm coming with you," Carly said, standing. Anthony let out a hard, humorless laugh. "You? You're a waitress. You'd be dead in 2 seconds." "I'm your only witness," she countered, stepping forward. "If you go in guns blazing, you end up in jail. You need someone to prove Elena and Marcus conspired to steal your company. I heard the call. I can testify." "Testimony doesn't matter if we're dead," he said. "Plus," Carly added, playing her trump card, "I know the foundry's layout." Anthony paused. "How?" "My dad," she said, lowering her voice. "He worked there for 30 years before Sterling fired everyone and stole their pensions. My dad was the foreman. I used to go after school. I know the tunnels below. If you go in the front door, they'll see you coming. I can get you in through the old drainage system." Anthony studied her. For the first time, he didn't see a waitress. He saw an ally. "What was your dad's name?" "Jose Lopez." Anthony nodded slowly. "Jose was a good man. I remember he tried to unionize against Sterling. He tossed her a bulletproof vest. It hit her chest, heavy and stiff. "Put it on, Lopez. Want to save my empire? Want revenge for your dad? Tonight's your shot." Carly strapped on the vest. It smelled like gun oil and fear. "Let's get your empire back," she said. The drive to Newark was a blur of neon lights and rain-slicked pavement. The tactical silence inside the SUV was suffocating. Anthony typed furiously on a backup tablet, trying to shield what was left of his assets, while Carly stared out the window, watching the city that had chewed her up and spit her out fade into the distance. The foundry was a red brick monster with shattered windows, squatting on the edge of the Passaic River like a giant tombstone. It had been shuttered for a decade since Marcus Sterling bought it, stripped the machinery, and laid off 500 workers, including Jose Lopez. "Kill the lights," Anthony ordered as they neared the perimeter. The head of security cut the engine a block away. The vehicle coasted silently into the shadows of an overpass. Guards at the main gate, Shaw observed, handing Anthony thermal binoculars. 2 on the roof, 1 patrolling the loading dock. They're expecting a frontal. Assault, Anthony said, lowering the binoculars. He turned to Carly. You said there's another way. Carly nodded, her throat dry. She pointed to the riverbank, where tall weeds hid a rusted iron grate. The storm drain. It runs straight under the main assembly floor. My dad used to sneak in there to smoke when the boss was around. He showed me when I was a kid. Lead on, Anthony said. They moved low. The damp night air soaked Carly's thin uniform and heavy vest. The riverbank mud sucked at her worn sneakers. At the grate, it was rusted shut. Shaw, Anthony indicated. The burly head of security gripped the iron bars with a grunt that tensed his neck muscles. He yanked it free with a screech of metal. They froze, waiting for a reaction from the guards. Nothing. The river wind covered the noise. Ladies first, Anthony whispered. But there was no mockery in his tone now. Carly, stagnant water, mold, and old grease. It smelled like her childhood memories, waiting for her dad at the factory gates. They waded through knee-high water. Carly traced the slime-covered brick walls with her fingers. Left here, she whispered, then hard right at the fork. As they went deeper, the air grew thick. Anthony's hand shot out, grabbing her arm to steady her. His grip was firm, warm. You okay? My dad died of lung issues from breathing the dust in this place. Sterling cut the ventilation budget to save cash. Anthony went quiet. To him, numbers on a spreadsheet were just profits or losses. To Carly, they were life or death. I'm sorry, Anthony said, his voice echoing slightly in the tunnel. Don't be. They reached a ladder recessed in the wall, rusted and treacherous. Above, a circular maintenance hatch. This comes out in the old tool room. Should be empty. Shaw went up first, pistol ready, nudged the hatch an inch, scanned, gave the all clear. They climbed up, emerging into a dusty voices. Anthony edged to the door, peered through a crack in the wood, his jaw clenched. We're in, he whispered. And she squinted through the slit. The massive main factory floor, once buzzing with assembly lines, was now an improvised command center. Server in the center. He was older than Anthony, late 50s, bald with a cruel mouth. And beside him, still in the red dress, was Elena. She held Anthony's phone. Carly felt sick. It was real. The betrayal wasn't just suspicion. It was a tableau of treason right before her eyes. They're hooking the phone to the server, Anthony noted, his voice iced over, bypassing the biometrics. How much time do we have? Carly asked. Anthony checked his watch. Once they bridge it, maybe 5 minutes before the funds release. We move now. Shaw checked his magazine. I count 6 hostiles on the floor, plus the woman. Non-lethal on the woman, Anthony said on instinct. Then he stopped. He watched Elena laugh as she handed the phone to a tech. Unless she pulls a weapon. The hardening of his heart hung in the air. Carly saw the man she'd served wine to just hours ago transform into a soldier. There's a catwalk, Carly pointed up to the rusted steel walkways hanging over the factory floor. If we get up there, we have the high ground. We can drop right behind the server bank. Good eye, Shaw grunted. They slipped out of the tool room, moving like shadows along the floor's edge. The hum of servers and portable generators covered their steps. They climbed a spiral staircase to the catwalks. From above, the scene looked like a perverse surgery. The techs were the doctors, Anthony's phone the patient, and they were draining its blood. More heavy industries capital. They crept along the metal grating. Through the slats, Carly heard the conversation clearly. You sure this works? Elena asked, her voice echoing. I don't want to be a fugitive without a dime. Marcus Sterling barked a laugh, lighting a cigar. Relax, darling. The code's cracking the encryption as we speak. You'll have your 20 million in under an hour. 20? Elena's voice sharpened. We agreed on 50. Market fluctuations, Sterling shrugged. Besides, you didn't handle dinner smoothly. Security cams show you running like a scared rabbit. I did what I had to, Elena snapped. You know how hard it was to pretend I loved him? He's so earnest. Pathetic, always, talking about building a legacy. He's a boy playing a man's game. Up on the catwalk, Anthony flinched like he'd been slapped. Carly, on instinct, reached out and touched his shoulder. He looked at her, eyes full of hurt and rage. He took a deep breath, refocusing. And the waitress? Sterling asked. My men say she vanished with him. She's a nobody, Elena scoffed. A server. Probably ran home to her cats. She doesn't know anything. Carly gritted her teeth. A nobody. Sir? A tech called. We're in. Biometrics bypassed. Initiating final transfer sequence. Complete in 90 seconds. A giant monitor on the table lit up. A progress bar appeared. Transfer initiated. Now, Anthony whispered. Shaw screwed on a suppressor. I'll take the 2 guards at the south door. Anthony, you hit the tech. Carly, stay low. No, Anthony said. I need Carly to cut the power. Carly blinked. What? The generators. Anthony pointed to the yellow machines rumbling in the corner. If you sever the main cable, the servers crash. The transfer stops. Can you do it? It was a 12-meter dash across exposed floor below. I can, Carly said, though her heart hammered. On my mark, Anthony said. Shaw lined up his shot. Anthony positioned himself right above Sterling. 3, 2, 1. Go. Thwip. Thwip. Shaw's shots were impossibly precise. 2 guards dropped silently. Anthony vaulted over the railing, dropping 10 feet onto a stack of pallets, rolling to his feet with fists ready. Sterling! He roared, his voice booming through the cavernous factory. Marcus Sterling jumped, dropping his cigar. Helena screamed, spinning around. Anthony? She gasped, color draining from her face. Stop the transfer! Anthony bellowed, charging toward the server table. Kill him! Sterling yelled to the remaining guards. Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off machinery. Anthony dove behind a heavy steel press. That was Carly's cue. She scrambled down the ladder at the catwalk's end. Her feet hit the concrete, and she ran. There's the girl! A guard shouted. He raised his rifle. Carly didn't look back. She sprinted for the yellow generators. She heard bullets whistle past, snapping the air like angry wasps. For Dad, she thought. For the nobody. She reached the generator. A thick, black cable snaked out of it, feeding the server bank. No switch. She scanned around. A fire axe hung on the wall in a glass case. She smashed the glass with her elbow, ignoring the pain. She grabbed the axe. The heavy wooden handle felt right in her hands. No! Sterling screamed, seeing what she was about to do. Carly swung the axe with all the strength of a woman who'd carried heavy trays 12 hours a day for 5 years. Crack. The blade bit deep into the thick rubber insulation. Sparks blinded and burned her. The factory lights flickered. The servers whined and died. The giant monitor went dark. Transfer failed, the tech yelled, panic in his voice. System down. Silence fell over the factory for a heartbeat. The only light now came from pulsing, red emergency strobes on the walls, bathing the scene in an infernal crimson glow. Carly panted, standing with the axe handle vibrating in her hands. She'd done it. But then she heard the click of a hammer cocking. She turned, slowly. Elena stood 10 feet away, holding a small silver pistol, aimed straight at Carly's heart. You filthy little rat, Elena hissed. Her hair was disheveled, her composure shattered. You ruined everything. Carly stood her ground, though her knees shook. I saved him from you. Saved him. Elena let out a manic laugh. You think he cares about you? You're just a tool. When this is over, he'll discard you like everyone else. Drop the gun, Elena, Anthony said, stepping out from behind the steel press. A graze on his cheek, his suit in tatters. Back off, Anthony! Elena shrieked, swinging the gun between Carly and him. I swear I'll kill her. I have nothing to lose. Marcus Sterling emerged from the shadows, flanked by his last 2 standing guards. He looked furious, but calculating. Well played, Moore, he spat. But you're outnumbered, and your little friend is about to paint the floor red. She's not my fiancée, Anthony said, advancing slowly, hands up. She's the only honest person in this room. Honesty doesn't pay the bills, Sterling sneered. Elena, shoot the girl, then him. We can reboot the servers. We just need time. Elena's hand trembled, the barrel wavering. Elena, Anthony said softly, persuasively, look at me. You don't want to do this. This is murder. Stealing companies is one thing. This is life in prison. I'm already dead, Elena sobbed, Tears streaked her face. You don't understand, Anthony. I owe money to people. Bad people. Gambling debts. Marcus bought my debt. If I don't give him the company, they kill me. Anthony stopped. The pieces clicked. The desperation, the anxiety at dinner. She wasn't a mastermind. She was a victim of her vices, caught in a web. I can help you, Anthony said. Drop the gun. We can fix this. It's too late, Elena wailed. Her finger tightened on the trigger, aimed at Carly. No! Anthony lunged, not at Elena, but at Carly. He threw his body in front of the waitress just as the gun fired. Bang! The report was deafening in the enclosed space. Anthony grunted. His body jerked like he'd been hit with a sledgehammer. He collapsed onto Carly, his weight driving her to the concrete floor. Anthony! Carly screamed, struggling out from under him. Blood bloomed on his white shirt, just below the shoulder. Elena dropped the gun, hands to her mouth. I didn't mean to. Secure the area! The head of security's voice boomed from the catwalks. Shaw, who'd flanked them during the standoff, opened fire with a submachine gun. He raked the ground in front of Sterling's guards. They dropped their weapons, instantly, realizing they were outmatched. Sterling looked at his guards, then at Elena, and bolted for the loading dock doors. Shaw, get him! Carly yelled, pressing her hands to Anthony's wound. On it! Shaw replied, sprinting after Sterling and vanishing into the dark. Carly ripped off her apron and pressed it hard against Anthony's chest. The blood was hot and sticky. Anthony, look at me. His eyes fluttered open, glassy. We stopped the transfer. Yes, Carly cried, tears mixing with the grime on her face. We stopped it. You saved me. Why'd you do it? Anthony managed a weak smile, blood-flecked. Investments. Have to protect them. Idiot, she sobbed, applying more pressure. Don't you dare die on me. You still owe me a tip. Elena was frozen, staring at what she'd done. Help me, Carly snapped. There's a first aid kit on the wall. Get it. Elena blinked, snapping out of it. She looked at the man she'd almost married, bleeding on the cold concrete. Guilt, heavy and crushing, finally broke her survival instinct. She ran to the wall, grabbed the kit, and returned on her knees. I'm sorry, she whispered, handing Carly the bandages. I'm so sorry. Save it for the judge, Carly snapped, tearing open a pressure dressing and packing the wound. Hold pressure here. Don't let go. Carly stood. Her hands were covered in Anthony's blood. She looked around the factory. The red emergency lights still pulsed. She heard sirens in the distance. Cops. Shaw must have called them. But then a low rumble shook the floor beneath her feet. It wasn't the police. It came from the basement, from the tunnels. The boiler, Carly whispered, eyes wide. Sterling didn't just cut ventilation. He bypassed the boiler's safety valves to save on maintenance. If the power cut killed the cooling pumps, the boiler's going to blow. Carly realized, looking at Anthony, barely conscious, at Elena, useless and sobbing, 100 yards from the exit. We have to move him, Carly ordered. Now. He can't walk, Elena cried. Then we drag him. Carly grabbed Anthony's good arm. Grab the other side, unless you want to die here with your debts. They heaved him up. He groaned, head lolling. They began the agonizing drag toward the dock doors. The floor vibrated violently as pressure in the ancient boiler hit critical. The foundry's basement was longer a building. It was a bomb about to detonate. The old boiler, pushed beyond its limits by the sudden blackout that killed the cooling pumps, screamed. It was a high-pitched mechanical shriek of tearing metal and escaping steam that vibrated into Carly and Anthony's bones. It pressed on them like a physical weight, scorching the air in their lungs. Every breath tasted like copper and sulfur. He's too heavy, Elena yelled, her voice cracking with panic. She stumbled, her high heels snapping on the oily concrete, nearly dropping Anthony's left side. Get up, Carly roared. She grabbed Elena's silk dress and yanked her upright. If you drop him, I leave you here to burn. Move. They were a grotesque, three-legged creature, staggering across the vast loading dock. Anthony was dead weight between them, his feet, dragging through the dust, leaving a long red smear of blood. He groaned low in his throat, a sound of agony that pushed Carly faster than fear of death. The ramp, Carly gasped, spotting the rectangle of moonlight 50 feet ahead. Almost there. but 50 feet felt like 50 blocks. Her muscles screamed, lactic acid burning her legs. She was a waitress. She was used to double shifts and sore feet, but this was another kind of endurance. It was carrying a life. They hit the loading ramp's incline. Cool night air hit them, clashing with the furnace heat of the factory and creating swirling fog at the entrance. "Clear the area! Fall back!" a voice shouted from outside. Shaw. They stumbled out of the warehouse darkness into the blinding glare of police spotlights. "Down, down," Shaw bellowed, running toward them from behind a cruiser. They didn't have time to run farther. Crack! It started with a sound like the sky splitting. The factory's structural supports gave way. Then came the roar. Boom! The explosion didn't just happen behind them. It ripped through them. The shockwave hit Carly like an invisible giant hand, lifting her off the ground and hurling her forward. The world dissolved into blinding white light and shattering glass. She hit the wet asphalt hard, scraping her palms. The air whooshed out of her. On instinct, she curled up, covering her head as debris rained down. Chunks of red brick, twisted rebar, and flaming insulation pelted the parking lot, bouncing off cruiser hoods like hellish hail. For a long moment, there was only the ringing in her ears, a high-pitched tone drowning out the world. Then sound returned. The crackle of fire, the wail of sirens, men's shouts. Carly coughed, spitting grit and ash. She pushed up on shaking arms. The foundry was gone. In its place stood a skeletal ruin, gutted by flames, licking high into the Newark night. Anthony. The name tore from her throat. She crawled through the mud to him. He was face down 10 feet away, jacket shredded, body still. "No, no, no," Carly sobbed, reaching him. She rolled him over. His face was ashen, lit by the fire's flicker. The blood on his chest was dark and terrifyingly plentiful. She pressed her hands over the wound, feeling it hot and sticky. "Stay with me. Don't give up. You're a billionaire. Buy yourself some more time." "Medic! We need a medic!" The head of security was there, dropping to his knees beside her. He looked terrified. For the first time, Shaw, the stoic security chief, seemed like a man about to lose a friend. Paramedics swarmed, pulling Carly's hands away. BP's crashing. "He's in hypovolemic shock. Get the IV in, prep for transport." Carly was shoved back, helpless, her hands coated in the blood of the man she'd just met, and somehow felt she knew better than anyone. She sat back on her heels, shaking violently as the adrenaline ebbed. She glanced left. Elena sat on a cruiser's rear bumper, physically unharmed, but with dead eyes. An officer read her rights in a monotone as he cuffed her. The red dress, once a symbol of her status and power, was torn and ruined, smeared with factory grime. Elena looked up. Her gaze crossed the chaotic emergency scene to meet Carly's. There was no anger in her expression anymore, no arrogance, just the hollow realization of a gambler who'd bet it all and lost. She stared at the burning factory, her retirement plan going up in smoke, then lowered her head as the officer guided her into the cruiser's back seat. "We got Sterling," Shaw said grimly. He stood over Carly, offering a hand. Tried to swim the channel. Police water unit fished him out. He's frozen, wet, and looking at life behind bars. Carly took Shaw's hand but didn't stand. She watched the ambulance where they loaded Anthony. "Is he going to?" She couldn't finish. "He's a fighter," Shaw said, though his eyes showed worry. "But he lost a lot of blood." "I'm going with him," Carly said. It wasn't a request. "Hospital policy says family only," Shaw began. "Screw policy," Carly snapped, fire back in her eyes. "I stanched his bleeding. I dragged him out. I'm not leaving him alone." Shaw really looked at her and nodded. He turned to the paramedic. "She's riding along. She's part of the security team." The paramedic didn't argue. Carly climbed into the ambulance's back, squeezing onto the corner bench as the doors slammed shut, muting the fire's roar. The ride was a blur of flashing lights and medical jargon. Carly reached out and took Anthony's hand. It was cold. His large, calloused hand felt lifeless in hers. "You promised," she whispered to the unconscious man, squeezing his fingers. "You promised me a tip. Don't you dare die with an unpaid tab, Anthony Moore." The heart monitor beeped steadily, a fragile, rhythmic promise of life. "Beep, beep, beep. 2 weeks later, the private wing of New York Presbyterian smelled of expensive relief and floor wax. It was a place of soft tones and dim lights, a total contrast to the foundry's grime and noise. Carly stood outside room 402, hesitating. She looked down at her clothes. No uniform. She wore a simple blue blouse and jeans from a discount store. She felt like an intruder. She'd saved his life. Yes, but now that the dust had settled, the gap between their worlds felt like a canyon again. He was Anthony Moore, master of the universe. She was Carly Lopez, unemployed waitress. "You know the nurse charges by the hour, and your overtime?" a voice said from inside. Carly smiled, tension breaking. She pushed the door. Anthony was propped up in bed against a pile of pillows, left arm in a sling, strapped to his chest, but his right hand flew over a laptop keyboard. He looked paler, a bit thinner, but the edge in his gray eyes was intact. "Working? Seriously?" Carly asked, approaching the bed's foot. "The world doesn't stop just because I got shot," Anthony said, though he closed the laptop. "Besides, I had loose ends to tie." Moore Heavy Industries just acquired Sterling Dynamics assets in a liquidation auction this morning, for pennies on the dollar. "Ruthless," Carly said, sitting in the visitor's chair. "Justice," he corrected. Marcus Sterling was denied bail. He's facing charges for corporate espionage, attempted murder, and arson. He'll never see daylight again. "And Elena?" Carly asked quietly. Anthony's expression softened just a fraction. "She pled guilty. She's cooperating with the DA for a reduced sentence. She'll do 10 years. He looked out the window at the city skyline. "I trusted her, Carly. That's what hurts most. I pride myself on seeing all angles, but I was blind." "You were in love," Carly said. "Love clouds the vision." "Maybe," Anthony replied, turning his gaze back to her. "But you weren't blind, you saw it all. Shaw tells me you haven't gone back to the diamond room." "Henry fired me by text," Carly said with a dry laugh. "Apparently, fraternizing with clients during a shootout violates the employee handbook. Now, I'm job hunting." "Good," Anthony said, "because I'm hiring." He took a thick manila envelope from the nightstand and slid it across the sheets to her. Carly hesitated. "Anthony, I didn't save you for a reward. I don't want charity." "Open it," he said, gently. "It's not charity. It's a business proposal." Carly unsealed it. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a letter from the dean of NYU Law School. It confirmed a full-ride scholarship, tuition, housing, books, and stipend, funded under the Jose Lopez Memorial Fund. Carly caught her breath. "My dad. You named it after him." "He worked 30 years in that factory," Anthony said quietly. "He deserved better than what he got. This is my way of balancing the books." Carly blinked back tears, her hand shaking as she lifted the second document. It was an employment contract. The contract was for a junior legal analyst position at Moore Heavy Industries. Salary, $100,000 a year. "Yeah, I don't get it," Carly stammered. "I haven't even finished school." "You've got shark instincts, Carly," Anthony said, leaning forward with a slight wince as the wound pulled. "You saw through a conspiracy that fooled my entire board. You memorized a factory layout from your childhood. You improvised a weapon with a fire axe. I can teach you the law. What I can't teach is that kind of guts." He looked her straight in the eyes. "I don't need another yes man in a suit. I need someone who'll tell me the truth, even if I don't want to hear it. I need a partner I can trust. Will you work for me?" Carly looked at the contract, then at Anthony. For years she'd felt invisible, powerless, a ghost moving through the world of the rich, refilling their glasses while they ignored her existence. But Anthony saw her. He valued her. "I accept the job," Carly said, her voice steady. "On one condition." "Name it," he replied. "No work dinners. If we eat, it's at a place where the napkins are paper and the ketchup comes in packets." Anthony laughed. A genuine, warm laugh that erased the last shadows of the foundry. "Deal." He reached into his robe pocket and pulled out a crumpled scrap of paper. He held it up. It was the note. The corners were worn, stained with dried red wine and a smear of his own blood. "Your fiancé sold you out. They're in position." "Why do you still have it?" Carly asked. "As a reminder," Anthony said, turning the paper between his fingers, "to remind me that my most valuable asset isn't my company, my stock portfolio, or my reputation. He looked at Carly, eyes intense and full of promise. It reminds me that one single napkin can save a life, and that sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right in front of you all along, serving you water. Carly smiled, a real, radiant smile. She took the pen from the nightstand and signed the contract with a decisive stroke. "Well then, boss," she said, standing. "I think you owe me a burger, and this time I'm not serving it." "Let's go," Anthony said, pressing the call button for his discharge paper. "I have a feeling it's going to be the best meal of my life." Carly Lopez started that night as a shadow in the background, a waitress who wasn't supposed to be seen or heard. She ended it as the savior of, a titan, proving that courage has no dress code and intelligence isn't measured by your bank balance. In a world of deceptions, her one act of honesty toppled a conspiracy and forged an unbreakable bond. This story reminds us that we all have a choice. When we see something wrong, we can look away or we can speak up. Carly spoke up, risking her job and her life for a stranger. And in doing so, she rewrote her own destiny. It's a powerful testament that sometimes the smallest actions, a note on a napkin, can have the biggest impact. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please give it a like. It helps us create more thrilling stories like this. What would you have done in Carly's shoes? Would you have slipped the note or stayed out of it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any new episodes. We've got plenty more drama, twists, and romance coming your way.